back with another episode of Vintage Club Conversations, where we chat with sales and revenue leaders about sales, tech, and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Yash. Yash, it's great to have you here.
Likewise, Manisha. Absolute pleasure to be here. I've heard a few podcasts and it looks like very insightful and a fresh perspective on all things GTM. So happy to be here.
Yeah, we try to learn a lot from our own podcast and also, help our viewers to take at least a couple of tips from every podcast.
Yep. Hopefully, I'll be able to add a few more insights there.
Absolutely. So I want to take a minute to introduce Yash. Kickstarting his career in finance, Yash spent some time in investment banking at Bank of America before moving to MoEngage actually in 2015 as VP sales. Over the last 10 plus years in the company, Yash has scaled with the organization, moving from VP sales to heading their APAC and EMEA business to leading their global business to now heading the GTM motion as Chief Revenue Officer. Yash is passionate about all things mobile, tech, and startup. Did we miss anything, Yash?
Wow, that's a glowing and a very kind introduction, Manisha. Feels like a long time now that I've been spending here. But yeah, no, I think you pretty summarized it pretty well.
Great. Well, I'm curious about your move from banking to startup sales, two entirely different worlds. What about sales attracted you at that time, and how has your banking experience, which was, of course, long back, come into play in your sales leadership journey?
I wish there's a really nice story to why the transition happened, but I think a lot of it is to do with the raw energy typically most 20-year-olds go through, right? I mean, obviously banking was a lot of fun, very gratifying in more ways than one, very financially rewarding as well. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I felt like I think more than sales, it was more like the startup bug. India was going through that incredible startup growth in that 2010 to 2015
Yeah.
era, right? And I had a bunch of good friends who were experimenting and tinkering with a few things, and I thought, why not try this? And I think what was really exciting at that part was being a generalist in a 0 to 1
Hmm.
journey. And as a non-tech guy, as an MBA grad, I think probably the only thing I could do was sales. I couldn't code for my life, so I was like, fine, let's give this a shot. So yeah, pure serendipity. Um, and in hindsight, it worked out really well for me for sure. Hopefully for the org as well. But yeah, not a lot of detailed thought process, and that's basically it. But I think what was definitely also interesting at that point was just the kind of growth journeys the early stage startups were
Yeah.
seeing at that point, right? Like, these were the days when, Flipkart was just, still very early days, but they were in pretty much in the news run every day. And you could see how transformational that entire experience was as a consumer, right? And you're like, wow, this is actually a life changing moment, probably once in a lifetime kind of moment. And I just wanted to be a part of that journey.
In fact, I have a similar story of transitioning from a corporate to startup. It was same year, 2014. That's when I started
Wow.
my first company. I was like, oh my God, India is going through this, startup boom. I want to be part of, that boom which is happening currently. So 2014 is when I started my first company.
Much coincidence.
Yeah. 10 years at MoEngage. You mentioned that, some mistakes, obviously a lot of achievements looking at MoEngage's growth. So could you talk to us about what's gone right in the journey so far? And on the flip side, what are some of the lessons learned along the way?
Sure, yeah, I think lessons learned a lot for sure. A few things gone right. I think firstly, what really helped us from the early days is just being very customer obsessed and keeping customers at the center of everything we do, right? And I think it's probably said more often than it
Yeah.
should be, but I think living that ethos is much harder. Just the fact that retention is not like a one person job, customer success is not a one person's job. Like, how do you get an entire organization to breathe that customer first mindset? I think that for us, I feel has been a game changer. So everything we did, be it in terms of the product, the roadmaps, the way we went about the go to market, we were always thinking about, hey, we're solving these problems for XYZ customer. Let's
Hmm.
probably go find like 10 more customers who could potentially be going through a similar problem, right? And it's like, oh, we've now solved this in market A. Can we now solve a similar problem in market B, right? So I think it is just always about, yeah, just solving that customer problem. And I think that's worked out really well, and still continues to be our biggest differentiating factor. The way we've built it, it almost become like a cultural ethos. And the second part, I guess, is the entire emphasis on culture. I feel right. Like I think in that,
Hmm.
when we are thinking a lot about growth at any cost, growth at what cost, at times culture takes a backseat. But for us, I think thankfully, all of us in the founding team have been very aligned that we should first get the culture right, and I think everything else will fall in place around that. So we've been holding on pretty strong to those cultural values, I feel, which automatically helps in like some of the employee retention, and the
Yeah.
way we sell to customers. I'm just very proud of the fact that some of the really early sales folks that I've hired, who are again generalists like me, who probably knew nothing about sales or SaaS, are still with us, running pretty large geographies for us. So that kind of helps in more ways than one, right? I think it's not spoken often enough, I guess, when you're in that
Yeah.
hyper growth phase, but I feel like that was a big factor.
Yeah, yeah. I think customer retention and team retention both are like really, really critical to success of any company.
Yeah, yeah. I think employees more so than anything, right? I think
Yeah,
it's all these early folk. There's just so much institutional knowledge that gets built,
yeah,
especially in a fast-growing startup. And if you're able to grow with them, I think it's rewarding in a lot of ways, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Well, customer obsession is there's one more I would say overlap. In the first point we discussed, there was an overlap, and then here also we have an overlap. In fact, one of the core values we have is customer obsession. Now, what I feel it is really much easier for GTM teams, sales, marketing, or pre-sales teams who are very close to customer or talking to customer on daily basis to have customer empathy. But
Yeah.
to have technology teams like product and engineering teams to have that customer empathy is very, very important. Because unless they don't have it, the product which they are building, you
Yeah.
know, it will show a gap that, the way customer is thinking versus the product is getting built is different. So building that customer obsession in product and engineering teams, I think is very, very important. Switching gears to the hottest topic of the season, AI, right? I think anyone working within the AI space has seen how drastically the market has changed over last 18 months and how it is still changing and evolving. We have just, scratched the surface. What's been your experience with implementing AI in MoEngage and for your clients? What are the top tools in your arsenal today?
When I think about it from a MoEngage product standpoint, we've been working on products for like almost 5 6 years now, and that obviously got accelerated a lot in the last 24 months. And I
Yeah.
think for a lot of our customers now, we're seeing massive productivity unlocks, right? In terms of a lot of operational metrics, right? Like so, in terms of, I mean, if you think about our customers, they spend a lot of time writing, like let's say copies for a push notification or copies for an email campaign and all of that. I think just something as basic as that, we're able to drive a lot of efficiency by generating copies, generating kind of
Hmm.
segments that they want to target, which audience segments that they want to go ahead and target. So we're bringing in a lot more science to this, instead of a lot of guesswork that used to happen earlier. So I think from a customer standpoint, they're definitely seeing a lot of value unlock already. I feel especially in the last 9 months, I think the results have been quite impressive. But I still feel like I think there's so much more to be done,
Yeah.
just from our product standpoint itself. When I think about it from our GTM team standpoint, I still feel like there's a lot to be done. We've done a bunch of experiments, seen good results on a few specific areas, I would say. So, for instance, if you were to take like, just again going back to writing emails, right? Like our team write a lot of emails. to prospects when they're reaching out to prospects, what kind of message goes out, depending on the persona, depending on the market, depending on the company context.
Yeah.
I think that entire research and personalizing that content has become a lot easier, of course, and kind of unlocked a lot more productivity there. So they're able to do much more in terms of the personalized outreach. That's also reducing what used to happen, like let's say 2 3 years back, where people are just putting a lot of leads and contacts in a cadence and trying to figure out who would probably respond. So
Yeah.
that part, which is cold outreach to prospects, I think is definitely a big value unlock. So that's one. I think we're also trying to experiment a little more with the entire pre-sales and solution consulting side of it, right? That's the other area where we feel like there's a massive value to be unlocked. And I think still early days there, but we feel like there's, like I said, I think with all the early employees and employees who spend a lot of time, there's a lot of institutional knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So, a person who spent 5 years in the team versus a new person who's responding to an RFP questionnaire, you can very clearly see the difference in the kind of quality that we see, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the second area where we're experimenting quite a bit. How can we, jumpstart the adoption and learning curve of someone who's new to the organization, and how can we kind of, standardize some of the best performing reps? How can we get that knowledge and democratize that, right? I think that's an area where I feel like there will be a meaningful unlock in the next 6 to 12 months, and I think we're also doing some bit of experiments on how to operate cadences and how to better run a lot of these pipeline cadences and stuff like that, which is more around the ops area. But we feel like, why do 30 people need to get on a forecast call every week to talk
Yeah.
about updates when probably, just AI-led capture can automate a lot of these things. I think these are three areas where we are definitely investing time and efforts, Manisha. I think still early days, a lot more to be done, but very promising results for sure in terms of what we're seeing today.
Yeah, I think there are so many to your first and third, mainly first use case. I think there are so many AI SDR companies today coming up, and it is just, so intuitive because it's top of the funnel. That's where you have like maximum contacts or leads. That gets a productivity boost. Or if your top of the funnel becomes better, of course, your bottom line and top line both become better.
Yeah, and for us, in a lot of markets, that's like a big bottleneck, right? Like I think as long as you're able to grow the top of the funnel, we feel like there's a massive opportunity to be unlocked. So yeah, for sure, very excited about experimenting more there.
Great. Switching to personal note now. What are some of your hobbies and interests outside of work? So in our last episode, we spoke to someone whose passion for yoga carried over to some interesting business principles at work. Do you find that they sometimes impact your professional life in, maybe surprising ways?
Good question. I think almost on a weekly basis, I end up playing a lot of poker, and there's
Oh,
I feel like there's a lot of similarities between poker and sales for sure. You lose more hands than you win, and same is the case with sales as well. You lose more deals than you win. I wish it was the other way around, but I think it's also about maximizing the odds, right, in everything that we do. For me,
yeah,
that's if I were to try and draw a parallel, that's probably a big learning for me, right? Like, how do you maximize odds with whatever you're dealt, and with and some of the things you can't change. The cards that are being dealt are what they are, uh, and same in sales, right? Like it is what it is from an external macro standpoint. In a lot of situations, there'll be promoters, there'll be detractors in every org that you sell to. You've got to maximize your odds and see how best you can go back home happy, right? And
wow,
and the more important thing is, how do you turn up the next hand or the next deal with the same enthusiasm to either make money and actually make money in both scenarios, right? Like, yeah, that's
yeah.
probably the same thing.
Yeah, and the most important thing, not leave the table when you're losing.
Exactly, exactly right. So yeah, now that I think of it, lot more parallels for sure between poker and sales.
Wow, this is such an interesting analogy. Like I play poker too, but I've never thought of poker in terms of, how to relate it to sales. But this is very, very interesting. I think next time, whenever I'm playing poker, maybe today evening itself, I am going to definitely think about your answer.
Please don't think about the prospects in the pipeline.
Great. Thank you so much, Yash, for taking the time to be part of this series.
Thank you so much for having me, Manisha. Appreciate the time.
Thanks.